The gravel crunched under Elias's boots like bones breaking underfoot as he stared at the sprawling ranch house rising from the Montana mist, its windows glowing like accusatory eyes in the pre-dawn chill. He had driven 300 miles from the nothing job in Billings, chasing a classified ad that promised steady work on this forgotten corner of paradise. But now, with his resume clutched like a lifeline in his calloused fist, he wondered if he had just traded one cage for another. And then the door swung open, revealing Harlan Whitaker, not the grizzled old-timer Elias had imagined, but a man in his early 40s, broad-shouldered and impeccably tailored even at this hour, his gaze locking onto Elias with an intensity that felt less like an interview and more like a confession waiting to spill. Elias swallowed the lump in his throat, the cold air biting at his skin through his threadbare jacket. Harlan extended a hand, firm and warm, the kind of grip that spoke of boardrooms and backroom deals, not hay bales and fence mending. "You're the one from the ad," Harlan said, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder over the plains, eyes never leaving Elias's face. Elias Kane. "Come in. Coffee's hot." The kitchen smelled of fresh ground beans and aged oak, a far cry from the stale takeout Elias had survived on back in the city. Harlan poured 2 mugs without asking, sliding one across the granite island that separated them like a moat. Elias wrapped his hands around the ceramic warmth, studying the man who had upended his life with a single phone call. Harlan was striking in a way that didn't belong out here, tall, with salt and pepper hair cropped close, a jaw carved from the same granite as the counter, and eyes the color of storm clouds over the Rockies. He wore a crisp white shirt untucked over slim-fit trousers, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms roped with muscle from who-knew-what pursuits. A millionaire landlord, the ad had said, seeking a farmer for his legacy property in the shadow of Glacier National Park. Elias had figured it for some vanity project, a rich guy's hobby farm. But the way Harlan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him sip the coffee, it felt personal. Too personal. "Tell me why you're here." "Elias," Harlan prompted, his tone casual but probing, like he was sifting for gold in river silt. Elias set the mug down, the steam curling between them like unspoken secrets. He had rehearsed this, the layoffs at the mill, the eviction notice from his cramped apartment, the gnawing ache of turning 28 with nothing to show but debt and a string of bad decisions in love. But the words stuck, tangled in the vulnerability of admitting he was running from an ex who had hollowed him out, from a life that felt like it was slipping through his fingers like dry earth. "I'm good with my hands," Elias finally said, voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. "Grew up on a spread like this in Wyoming. Lost it when the bank came calling. I know soil, seasons, what it takes to make something grow from nothing." He met Harlan's gaze then, and something shifted in the air, electric as the first crack of lightning. Harlan nodded slowly, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. But his eyes, they held Elias captive, searching, as if he had already decided something profound. By noon, the deal was struck, room in the bunkhouse, 3 squares a day from the ranch cook, and a salary that made Elias's head spin, enough to pay off his truck loan and then some. Harlan shook his hand again on the porch, the sun breaking through the clouds to paint the valleys gold below them. "Start tomorrow," Harlan said. "We'll see what you could do with the land." But as Elias climbed into his battered Ford and rumbled down the drive, Harlan's silhouette lingered in the rear view, arms folded, watching until the dust settled. Elias gripped the wheel tighter, heart pounding with a mix of relief and unease. This wasn't just a job. It felt like the beginning of a story he wasn't sure he wanted to read. The first week blurred into a rhythm of sweat and soil, Elias's body remembering the work like an old lover's touch. Dawn broke with a rooster's crow from the coop he'd mended on day one, and by dusk, his muscles sang with the ache of purpose. The ranch, Whitaker Hollow, Harlan called it, sprawled over 2,000 acres of rolling hills dotted with pine groves and wildflower meadows. A slice of Montana's untamed heart that Harlan had bought on a whim 5 years back. Or so the ranch hands whispered over beers in the bunkhouse. Jasper, the wiry foreman with a mustache like a broom bristle. And Theo, the quiet vet who fixed more than just broken legs. They eyed Elias with the cautious camaraderie of men who had seen transients come and go. But they warmed quick when he proved his mettle, pulling a plow through stubborn clay without complaint. Harlan kept his distance at first, appearing like a specter at odd hours, observing from the veranda as Elias wrestled irrigation lines into place, or joining the crew for lunch under the ancient cottonwood, his questions sharp as a hawk's beak. "What's the yield on that alfalfa last season?" he'd ask. Or, "How'd you spot the blight so early?" Elias answered honestly, surprised by how Harlan hung on his words, leaning forward with an intensity that made the other hands chuckle later. "Boss man's got a soft spot for strays," Jasper ribbed one night, slapping Elias on the back as they nursed cans of Coors by the fire pit. "Just don't go getting ideas. He's all city polish under that Stetson, but ideas crept in anyway, insidious as morning fog." Elias caught himself glancing toward the big house at twilight, its lights a beacon against the darkening sky, wondering what Harlan did up there alone. The man was a riddle wrapped in luxury. Whispers from Theo painted him as a tech mogul who'd cashed out on some Silicon Valley startup, trading algorithms for anonymity out here. Divorced, no kids, a ghost of a family fortune from Texas oil money. Yet in the quiet moments, when Harlan handed Elias a cold water bottle after a long haul, their fingers brushing just a beat too long, Elias felt the pull, a magnetic hum that stirred dust long settled in his soul. One evening, as thunderheads gathered like bruised fists over the peaks, Elias was forking hay into the stables when Harlan appeared, unannounced, in a linen shirt that clung to his frame from the humidity. "Storm's coming," Harlan said, grabbing a pitchfork without preamble. They worked side by side, the air thick with the scent of rain-kissed earth and horse sweat, silence broken only by the creak of wood and the distant rumble. Elias stole glances, Harlan's profile etched in the fading light, a bead of sweat tracing the line of his neck into the collar. It was innocent, or meant to be, until Harlan straightened, wiping his brow, and caught Elias staring. "You've got away with this place," Harlan murmured, voice low against the wind picking up. "Like you belong." Elias's throat tightened, the words landing like a touch he hadn't expected. He mumbled something about the land choosing you. But Harlan stepped closer, close enough that Elias could smell his cologne, cedar and spice. Out of place, yet fitting amid the hay. "It chose you for me," Harlan said, and the world narrowed to the space between them, charged and unspoken. That night, Elias lay in his bunk, the rain lashing the tin roof like accusations, replaying the moment until it blurred into dreams. Harlan's eyes, dark and knowing, the brush of shoulders in the stable, the way for me, hung in the air like a promise. He woke with the dawn tangled in sheets, heart racing, and wondered if he was reading maps where there were only roads. But as he stepped out into the downpour to check the fences, Harlan was there on the porch, coffee in hand, waving him up with a grin that cut through the gray. "Breakfast before you drown," he called. Elias climbed the steps, water streaming from his hair, and for the first time in years, the weight on his chest felt a little lighter. As weeks melted into months, the ranch became Elias's anchor, the work of balm for wounds he hadn't named. He transformed the east field from barren scrub to verdant rows of corn and sunflowers, their heads bowing like supplicants to the endless sky. Harlan noticed, of course, how could he not, with his habit of riding out on his chestnut gelding, Dante, to inspect progress that was more excuse than necessity. They'd dismount under the shade of a lone ponderosa, sharing jerky and stories. Elias of Wyoming summers chasing fireflies with his brother Caleb, now a ghost in some Denver high-rise. Harlan of Austin boardrooms where deals were sealed with handshakes that hid knives. "You're not what I expected in a farmer," Harlan admitted one afternoon. Sprawled on a checkered blanket they'd unpacked from his saddlebag, the air humming with cicadas. Elias chuckled, popping a sunflower seed between his teeth, the sun gilding Harlan's features like a Renaissance painting come to life. "And you're not the absentee landlord I figured. What's a guy like you doing buried out here? Harlan, you could be sipping martinis in Manhattan." Harlan's laugh was rare, a deep vibration that rumbled through Elias like seismic aftershocks. He propped on elbow, gaze drifting to the horizon where mountains' teeth gnashed the clouds. "Manhattan chews you up and spits out husks. This," he gestured to the land, but his eyes flicked back to Elias, lingering. "This is real. You can touch it, break your back for it, watch it fight back and win sometimes." A shadow crossed his face then, brief as a cloud's passage, and Elias ached to ask about the divorce Theo had hinted at, a messy unraveling with a woman named Lydia. Whispers of infidelity and empty promises. Instead, he offered a seed, their fingers grazing in the exchange, and the contact sparked like flint on steel. Harlan held his gaze, the air thickening, until a hawk's cry shattered the moment. They packed up in silence, but as they rode back, Harlan reined in beside Elias at the corral gate. "Dinner at the house tomorrow," he said. "Not a question. Just us. No hands. No excuses." Elias nodded, pulse thundering louder than hooves on dirt. And that night, under a canopy of stars that felt too vast for one man's longing, he allowed himself to imagine what just us might mean. The dinner was a revelation, candlelight flickering off crystal wine glasses, a spread of grilled ribeye and heirloom tomatoes from the greenhouse Elias had rigged. The dining room a cathedral of exposed beams and leather-bound books. Harlan in a button-down the color of midnight, sleeves rolled, looking every inch the magnate, yet softened by the fire's glow. They talked for hours, politics in D.C., the ache of lost faith in progress, the quiet terror of turning 40 without someone to share the silence. Elias opened up about Marcus, the ex in Billings who'd promised forever then fled with a coworker, leaving Elias adrift in a sea of what-ifs. "You deserve more than scraps," Harlan said, refilling Elias's glass, his hand steady but eyes turbulent. The room felt smaller, the space between them shrinking with each shared breath. When dessert arrived, a berry cobbler still warm, Harlan's foot brushed Elias's under the table. Deliberate. Testing. Elias froze, heat flooding his veins, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he met the touch, ankle to ankle, a silent vow in the dim light. Later, on the porch swing with night wrapping around them like a shawl, Harlan's voice dropped to a whisper. I hired you because the ad was a lie. Elias. I saw your photo in the application. Those eyes, like they held a whole damn world. I needed someone real. Someone who sees me. Not the money. Elias's breath caught. The confession a key turning in a lock he'd long thought rusted shut. He turned, Harlan's face inches away, illuminated by moonlight that silvered his lashes. Their lips met then, tentative at first, then fierce, a collision of hunger and hesitation. Hands tangling in hair and shirt fronts, the swing creaking under the weight of revelation. But as they broke apart, gasping, Harlan's expression fractured. Wait, he murmured, pulling back, shadows deepening the lines around his mouth. There's something I haven't told you. Elias's heart stuttered, the night air turning cold against his flushed skin. Whatever came next, he knew it would change everything. The kiss lingered on Elias's lips like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing, sweet and sharp as the first frost on blackberry brambles. He drove back to the bunkhouse in a daze. The ranch rode a ribbon of moonlight unspooling beneath his tires. Harlan's words echoing. There's something I haven't told you. What secret could eclipse the raw vulnerability of that moment? The way Harlan's hands had trembled against his jaw. As if touching fire for the first time, Elias tossed in his bunk until dawn, the revelation warring with dread. But when morning broke clear and crisp, Harlan was waiting at the corral, coffee in hand, his smile a fragile bridge over the chasm. They fell into a new rhythm then, laced with stolen glances and brushes of intent. The press of Harlan's palm at the small of Elias's back as they inspected the herd, or the way he'd linger in the kitchen after breakfast, pouring seconds no one asked for. The hands noticed, of course, Jasper's knowing winks over fence posts, Theo's quiet, be careful, kid during a vet check. But Elias floated on it, the ranch blooming under his care as surely as his heart under Harlan's gaze. Sunflowers nodded in the breeze like conspirators, and the air hummed with possibility. Montana's vastness shrinking to the space between two men learning each other's silences. Yet the unspoken loomed, a storm cloud on the horizon. Harlan dodged it at first, deflecting with rides into the backcountry, packing lunches and thermoses, leading Elias along trails that wound through aspen groves where leaves whispered secrets to the wind. On one such outing, high above the valley, they tethered the horses and hiked to an overlook where the world fell away in jagged splendor. Harlan spread a blanket, uncorked a bottle of Cabernet from his cellar, and they sat shoulder to shoulder, the sun dipping low like a coin into the earth's pocket. I grew up in a house like this one, Harlan began, voice threaded with memory's rough weave. Texas Panhandle, oil rigs humming like mechanical crickets. Daddy built an empire, but swallowed him whole, left Ma a widow at 45, staring at walls that echoed. He took a swig from the bottle, passing it to Elias, their fingers linking briefly. I clawed out to California, made my millions coding apps that connected strangers but left me hollow. Bought this place to, I don't know, rewrite the script. Elias listened, the wine warming his chest. Harlan's profile a study in contrasts, power etched in every line. yet softened by confession. And the divorce? He ventured, the words careful as stepping stones over a swollen creek. Harlan's jaw tightened, gaze fixed on a distant eagle wheeling lazy circles. Lydia was the script. Perfect on paper, old money, charity galas, the whole facade. We tried, God knows. But she wanted kids, heirs to parade at country clubs. He trailed off, the admission hanging like smoke. I couldn't give her that. Not because I didn't love her, but because I never did. Not like that. The pieces slotted into place, then, jagged and illuminating. Harlan's intensity. The way his eyes traced Elias not as a boss, but a mirror. Elias set the bottle down, heart pounding a tattoo against his ribs. You mean, Harlan turned, searching his face, vulnerability cracking the magnate's mask. I've known since college, buried it under deals and denials. Out here, alone, it surfaced. Then you answer the ad, and damn if you didn't look like the answer to a prayer I never voiced. Elias closed the gap, kissing him with the sun as witness, slow, deliberate, a claiming that erased miles and years. Harlan responded with a hunger that bordered on desperation, pulling Elias down onto the blanket, hands mapping collarbones and hips through denim. They tangled there as shadows lengthened, breaths mingling with the scent of pine sap and earth, body speaking what words faltered. It was revelation and release. Harlan's whispers against Elias's neck a litany of finally and but paradise fractures easy in Montana's wind. They returned flushed and disheveled, the horses nickering knowingly, only to find Jasper waiting at the stable with a truck idling and a face like thunder. Boss, you got company, he said, jerking a thumb toward the house. Elias's stomach dropped as they crested the rise, a sleek black SUV parked beside Harlan's Range Rover. And striding across the gravel was a woman in designer boots and a cashmere wrap, Lydia. Her hair a blonde cascade, eyes sharp as she spotted them. Harlan, she called, voice honey over steel, but her gaze flicked to Elias, assessing, dismissing. Harlan stiffened beside him, the warmth of the afternoon evaporating. What are you doing here? He asked, tone clipped as he dismounted. Lydia smiled, brittle as autumn leaves. We need to talk. About us. About the future. She glanced at Elias again. The implication a slap. Outsider. Intruder. Elias busied himself with the horses, ears straining as they retreated inside, the door clicking shut like a verdict. He waited in the bunkhouse that night, supper untouched on his tray, the clock ticking accusations into the dark. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m. The crunch of gravel announced her departure, taillights fading into the night. Harlan appeared at dawn, hollow-eyed, knocking softly on Elias's door. She wants reconciliation, he said, sinking onto the edge of the bed, elbows on knees. For the optics, the shares in the family trust. Says we can make it work. Therapy, whatever. Elias sat up, the sheets pooling around him, dread coiling like barbed wire. And you. Harlan's laugh was bitter, self-lacerating. I told her no. But she planted doubts. Elias. What if this us is just isolation's fever dream? What if I'm dragging you into my mess? Elias reached for him, but Harlan stood, pacing the cramped space. You're young, free. This ranch, It's my cage as much as escape. The word stung, a fracture in their fragile new world. And Elias felt the first crack in his resolve, the fear that love, when it came, always came laced with loss. Days blurred into a tense standoff. Harlan retreating to his study with calls to lawyers and ledgers. Elias pouring himself into the land until his hands blistered raw. The sunflowers wilted under his glare, petals curling like accusations, and the hands tiptoed around the chill. Theo pulled him aside one evening, over fence mending in the lower pasture. Boss is scared. Son, Lydia's poison lingers. Give him time. But time felt like erosion, wearing at the edges of what they'd built. Then came the letter, slipped under Elias's door like a serpent's tongue, cream vellum. Lydia's elegant script inviting him to coffee in Kalispell. For Harlan's sake, it read. We need to understand each other. Curiosity warred with caution. But Elias went. The diner's vinyl booze a neutral ground amid pie smells and trucker chatter. Lydia arrived poised, pearls glinting like warnings, ordering black coffee with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're good for him, she said without preamble, stirring sugar she didn't need. Out here, he was fading, drinking too much, staring at walls. But this, her gesture encompassed Elias. The implication clear. It's a phase, darling. Men like Harlan don't upend empires for ranch hands. He needs stability, legacy. You could ruin him. The words landed like blows, stirring ghosts of Marcus's dismissals. And Elias left with his pride in tatters. The drive back a blur of tears and rage. He confronted Harlan that night. The letter crumpled in his fist. The big house's kitchen a battlefield of shadows. Is that what this is? A phase? Harlan's face crumpled, reaching for him. But Elias recoiled. She came to me, Harlan, said I'd destroy you. The dam broke then. Harlan's voice cracking as he poured out the truth, Lydia's threats of scandal. Frozen assets. The board breathing down his neck for a proper image. I love you, he whispered, raw and wrecked. But love doesn't pay the wolves at the door. Elias stormed out into the night. The stars indifferent witnesses. His truck keys biting into his palm. He drove aimlessly, the radio crooning country laments, until the tank sputtered dry on a back road. Stranded under a canopy of evergreens, he sank against the hood, sobs racking him as the truth settled. He'd fallen, hard and heedless, into a love that might demand everything. Dawn found Elias shivering on the truck's hood, dew soaking through his jeans. The forest a cathedral of silence, broken only by his ragged breaths. He hitchhiked back at first light, thumb out to a passing rancher who dropped him at the hollow's gate without questions. The man's sympathetic grunt, the closest Elias came to absolution. The bunkhouse loomed empty, the hands already afield, and Harlan's truck was gone, Kalispell. Maybe, or worse, chasing Lydia's phantom stability. Elias packed a duffel in mechanical motions, faded tees, work gloves worn to transparency, the photo of Caleb from better days. He slung it over his shoulder, pausing at the door to trace the grain of the wood. Memories flooding like spring thaw, Caleb's laugh, Marcus's lies, Harlan's kiss under aspen shade. The betrayal stung deepest, not in Lydia's words, but in Harlan's hesitation, the what-if that echoed his own fears. Elias had come here hollow, chasing soil simplicity, only to unearth a heart he'd thought long buried. Now, it bled, and the ranch, once sanctuary, felt like a grave. He scrawled a note on bunkhouse stationery. Take care of the sunflowers. They need water twice a week. Taped to Harlan's office door. It was goodbye without the weight of finality. A thread he might one day tug. He walked the drive, gravel biting soles, the big house silent as a held breath. Jasper spotted him from the barn, jogging over with a thermos and frown. Leaving already? Thought you were routine. Elias forced a smile, thin as pie crust. Roots don't always hold. Jas. Tell the boss. Tell him I get it. Jasper pressed the thermos into his hands, black coffee, strong as regret, and clapped his shoulder. Montana's big, but it circles back. Don't be a stranger. Elias nodded, throat tight, and hitched another ride south. Thumb out to Missoula, the road unspooling like a severed vein. The city hit like a slap, horns blaring, sidewalks choked with hurried souls. The university towns was a frantic counterpoint to ranch quiet. Elias crashed on a buddy's couch. Rory, an old Wyoming pal bartending at a dive called the Rusty Spur, trading labor for floor space. Days bled into shifts slinging drinks. Nights staring at water stains on the ceiling. Harlan's face superimposed like a ghost. He avoided news of the hollow, ignored the burner phone's silence. But dreams betrayed him. Harlan's hands on his skin, Lydia's smile a serpent's coil, the sunflowers wilting under neglect. Healing came in fragments, jagged as broken bottles. Rory dragged him to open mics, where poets spilled guts over guitar strums, their verses mirrors to Elias's unspoken ache. One night, a lanky kid named Finn, tattooed arms, voice like smoked honey, sang of lost loves reclaimed. And afterward, over cheap whiskey, their knees brushed under the table. Finn was easy, uncomplicated, a grad student in environmental lit, eyes bright with questions, no empires or ex-wives shadowing. They tumbled into bed that week, bodies a distraction from the hollow in Elias's chest. Finn's whispers a temporary salve. You're carrying something heavy, Finn murmured post-climax, tracing Elias's ribs. Want to share? Elias deflected with a kiss, but the weight lingered, heavier now. Autumn crept in with crimson maples and chill winds, mirroring the slow unfurling in Elias's soul. He enrolled in a community AG course at the college, nights spent poring over soil science texts, days planting rooftop gardens for urban co-ops. The work grounded him. Dirt under nails a reminder that growth followed ruin. Letters from Jasper arrived sporadic. The corn harvest bountiful. Theo's full thriving. No mention of Harlan. Elias burned them after reading. Ashes scattered in the Missoula River. Rituals to release what clung. But release was illusion. One rainy Tuesday, mid-shift at the spur, the door swung open and there he was, Harlan, drenched in a wool coat too formal for the dive, eyes scanning the dim like a man drowning. Elias froze mid-pour, whiskey sloshing over the rim, the bar's chatter fading to a hum. Harlan approached slow, water pooling at his boots, face gaunt as winter birch. Elias, he breathed, the name of prayer. I saw the note. The sunflowers, they're taller than me now. Elias set the bottle down, hands trembling. The patron's glances pricks on his skin. What are you doing here? Voice steady. But inside, a storm raged, anger, longing. the ache of months untreated. Harlan leaned on the bar, close enough for Elias to smell cedar cologne mingled with rain. Looking for you. Every day since. His eyes, storm gray and shattered, held Elias captive. Lydia's gone, signed the papers, took her shares. The board can choke. I sold the startup stock. This is me, Elias. No scripts. The shift dragged eternal after that. Harlan nursing a soda in a corner booth, gaze never straying. Elias clocked out at 2 a.m. Rory's eyebrow arched a silent question, and they stepped into the downpour. Streetlights haloing puddles like fallen stars. Drive, Elias said, climbing into Harlan's rental. The cab a cocoon of tension. They wound out of town, rain sheeting the windshield, Harlan's knuckles white on the wheel. I panicked, he confessed, voice breaking over the wiper's rhythm. Thought I was poison, tainting something pure. But losing you? That's the real death. Elias directed him to the river overlook, a spot where willows wept into the current, the same place he'd scattered ashes. They sat on the hood, shoulders touching, the storm a veil for truths long damned. Elias spoke first of Finn's kindness, the gardens that bloomed under his hands, the slow mending of fractures. I needed to stand alone, he said, turning to Harlan, rain tracing his temples like tears. To know I could. Harlan nodded, pulling a small box from his coat, dirt-streaked, wrapped in twine. Inside, a vial of soil from the east field, sunflowers etched on the glass. For your new starts, Harlan whispered. Wherever. The kiss that followed was salt and renewal. Harlan's lips cold from rain, but warming with desperation. Hands cupping Elias's face as if he might vanish. They clung there, the river murmuring benedictions, barriers crumbling in the deluge. Come back, Harlan pleaded against his mouth. Not as farmer. As mine, Elias pulled away, searching those eyes, seeing not the magnate but the man flawed. Fierce, finally free. On my terms, he countered, heart swelling. We build slow. No rushing the roots. They drove back through the easing rain. Harlan to a motel. Elias to Rory's couch. But promises hummed between them like power lines after a blackout. The next week, Elias gave notice at the spur, packed his duffel with Finn's blessing, a hug, and he looks at you like your oxygen, and hit the road north, the vial tucked in his pocket like talisman. The hollow welcomed him not with fanfare, but quiet, Jasper's bear hug, Theo's sly grin, the sunflowers arching toward him like old friends. Harlan waited on the porch. No Stetson this time. Just Harlan, shirt untucked, eyes alight. They embraced there, the valley unfolding below, a canvas for second chances. Winter clamped down on Whitaker Hollow like a vice, snow blanketing the fields in hush white, the world reduced to firelight and fortitude. Elias settled back into the bunkhouse at first, needing space to breathe the new air between them. But nights drew him to the big house, dinners by the hearth, Harlan's stories unfurling like wool blankets against the cold. They talked of everything and nothing, the ethics of heirloom seeds, Harlan's failed novel from his 20s, Elias's dream of a co-op farm for at-risk youth. Laughter came easier now, laced with touches, Harlan's thumb tracing Elias's knuckles over chess pieces, or Elias leaning into Harlan's side during movie marathons of old westerns. John Wayne's bravado a foil to their quiet intimacies. Intimacy deepened in layers, patient as tilling frozen ground. Their first night fully together came mid-January. A blizzard howling outside like a jilted lover. The power flickering until the generator kicked in. Harlan's bedroom was a haven of flannel sheets and cedar beams. The king bed swallowing them as they shed layers, slow, reverent, mapping scars and freckles with lips and fingertips. Harlan's body was a landscape of contrasts, broad chest dusted silver. Hips narrow from desk days reclaimed by rides. The vulnerability in his size, a gift Elias cradled. "I've waited lifetimes for this," Harlan murmured, voice gravel rough as Elias moved over him, their rhythms syncing like seasons turning. Afterward, tangled in sweat-damp linens, Harlan's head on Elias's chest. The storm outside mirrored the one within, fierce, cleansing, spent. But peace is Montana's cruel tease, spring unearthed, not just green shoots but buried thorns. Lydia's shadow lingered in legal missives, contested clauses in the divorce. Whispers to Harlan's old board contacts painting him as unstable, unfit. Then came the accident. Jasper's horse threw him during a fence check. Compound fracture and fever spiking. The ranch teetering as Theo played doctor in the guest room. Elias stepped up, dawn to dusk, milking, mending, mediating hands grumbles, while Harlan vanished in calls, his empire's remnants demanding tribute. Exhaustion carved hollows under Elias's eyes, resentment simmering like sap on low boil. The breaking point arrived in April. Mud seasons slop turning paths to quagmires. Elias trudged to the house after corralling strays, boots caking earth, to find Harlan on the phone in the study, voice a whip crack. "No, I won't sell this South 40. It's not leverage." He hung up, spotting Elias in the doorway, and crossed to him in 3 strides, pulling him into a fierce hug that smelled of stress, sweat, and scotch. Boards circling again. "Lydia's feeding them lines, says I'm spiraling. That you're the cause." Elias stiffened, pulling back. "Me or us?" Harlan's face twisted, defensiveness flashing. "It's business, Elias. They don't understand this life." But the words landed wrong, echoing Lydia's poison, and Elias's temper, banked too long, flared. "Business? That's what you call hiding us. Jasper asked today if you're sweet on the new hand. I lied." "Harlan." Again, the room crackled, Harlan's hands raking through his hair. "What do you want? A billboard? This isn't San Francisco Pride Parades." "It's my legacy on the line." Elias laughed, bitter as wormwood. "Legacy? That's the cage, isn't it? Not the land, the ghosts." He stormed out, mud flinging from his heels, the argument chasing him into the gloaming. That night, sleep evaded, he wandered the stables, whispering to the horses, their warm breaths a poor substitute for Harlan's. Dawn brought regret, but pride held him back, and by noon, Harlan was gone, truck barreling down the drive toward Billings for a summit with suits. The crisis crested in Harlan's absence, a microcosm of unraveling. Theo confided over coffee. "Boss is cracking. Drinks alone. Stares at your empty bunk like it's a crime scene." Elias ached, but the hurt festered, memories of Marcus's evasions. The fear that love always demanded erasure. He threw himself into the co-op dream, sketching plans on napkins, a youth program teaching sustainable AG, funded by ranch surplus. Finn emailed encouragement from Missoula, a reminder of worlds beyond, but it only sharpened the loneliness. Harlan returned a week later, hollow-cheeked, bearing a bottle of Wyoming bourbon and eyes like bruised plums. He found Elias in the east field, knee-deep in seedling trays. The sunflower's first sprouts a green defiance. "I fixed it," Harlan said, setting the bottle down like an offering. "Told the board to fuck off. Liquidated enough to buy them out. This place, it's ours now." No strings. Elias straightened, dirt-streaked and wary. The admission a balm, but not cure. "Ours or yours?" With me as footnote. The fight reignited. Voices rising over the rustle of leaves. Accusations of selfishness. Pleas for trust. The raw underbelly of fear exposed. Harlan grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him close. Foreheads touching. "I'm terrified, damn it, of losing you to my failures. But I'd rather burn it all than live without this." Tears tracked Harlan's cheeks, mixing with soil on Elias's. And in that vulnerability, the walls crumbled. They sank to the earth, bodies entwining amid the sprouts, making love under open sky, fierce, forgiving, the field a witness to surrender. Spring unfurled in earnest after, wounds scabbing to strength. Jasper healed, walking with a limp but grin intact. The hands toasted the official thaw at a bonfire. Beers raised to unspoken alliances. Elias and Harlan navigated the new normal. Harlan learning tractor gears. Elias poring over ledgers. Their evenings a weave of domesticity, cooking chili from garden peppers, dancing slow to Willie Nelson on the porch radio. Yet the crisis had reshaped them, deepening roots. Harlan proposed a co-op formally one June evening. Oversteak grilled rare. The valley alive with fireflies. "Make it real," he said, sliding blueprints across the table. "Your vision. My backing. For the kids who need ground under their feet." Elias's throat closed. The gesture a bridge from isolation to community. And he kissed Harlan then, sealing not just partnership, but purpose. Summer brought the first group, 10 teens from Billings group homes, wide-eyed and wary, learning to plant under Elias's guidance. Harlan's quiet presence a steady anchor. Watching a girl named Riley, 16, tough-shelled from Foster Mills, nurse a tomato vine to fruit. Elias felt the healing crest, not erasure of pain, but alchemy, turning betrayal's ash to fertile soil. As the co-op took root, so did their life together, a tapestry woven from deliberate threads, mornings tangled in Harlan's bed. The scent of coffee brewing as Elias traced the map of veins on Harlan's forearm, afternoons afield. Harlan's laughter booming as he fumbled a hoe. Elias's patient corrections laced with affection. The ranch hummed with new energy, the kids' chatter echoing from the greenhouses. Jasper regaling them with tall tales of grizzlies and gold strikes. Theo's vet van a constant shuttle for injured critters they rehabbed. Whitaker Hollow wasn't just land anymore. It was haven, a defiant thumb to the world's judgments. Harlan shed his city skin layer by layer, trading suits for Carhartts, his hands callousing from hammer swings on the new bunkhouse for co-op overnights. "Feels like absolution," he'd say, flexing blistered palms over dinner. Elias massaging salve into them with a tenderness that bordered on worship. Their love manifested in quiet rituals, Sunday drives to going to the Sun Road, Windows down to let wind scour secrets. Midnight confessions by the fire. Harlan admitting boyhood crushes on the ranch hand next door. Elias unspooling the ache of coming out to Caleb, who had hugged him fierce before the cancer claimed him. But Harmony invites hubris, and Summer's peak brought reckoning. Lydia resurfaced, not in flesh, but fury, a tabloid smear in a Billings rag. Tech tycoon's rural romp. Millionaire's midlife crisis or Montana madness? Photos pilfered from socials. Harlan and Elias at the co-op picnic. Arms slung casual. Kids blurred in background. Grainy shots of their porch dances. Twisted into scandal. The article dripped venom. Quotes from insiders decrying Harlan's reckless abandon. Implications of grooming the vulnerable farmhand. Jabs at the co-op as tax dodge for deviant dalliances. The board. Newly ousted but vengeful. Amplified it online. Shares tanking Harlan's remaining ventures. Sponsors pulling from the co-op's nascent fundraisers. Harlan downplayed it first, crumpling the printout with a curse. But Elias saw the toll. Sleepless nights, pacing the study. Scotch bottles emptying faster. The magnate's armor cracking under public gaze. It's noise he'd insist, pulling Elias close. But his eyes betrayed the lie, fear of tainting their sanctuary, of the world's ugliness seeping through the fences. Elias felt it too, a coiling dread that poisoned the idol. The kids noticed. Riley's questions sharp as she weeded rows. Why's everyone staring at the news truck down the road? Reporters circled like coyotes. Kalispell headlines branding them the Hollow's hidden affair. Finn texted solidarity from Missoula. But even Rory called. Voice laced concern. You okay? Man, this shit's viral. Elias's past ghost stirred. Marcus's abandonment after a similar outing. The small-town whispers that drove him west. And he wondered if love's price was always exposure's blade. The crisis peaked at the county fair. The co-op's booth, a riot of produce pyramids and kid-crafted signs. Grow with us, seeds of change. Harlan manned the grill, flipping burgers with forced joviality. Elias beside him, slicing tomatoes, their shoulders brushing in silent solidarity. But the crowd parted for her, Lydia, arm in arm with a silver-haired exec type, her smile a scalpel as she approached. Harlan, darling, she cooed, loud enough for ears to prick. Slumming it suits you. And this must be the inspiration. Her gaze raked Elias. Dismissive, the exec chuckling like a bad cue. Harlan's jaw locked, spatula pausing midair. Lydia. Come for the pie, she laughed, tinkling malice. Came to warn you before the real storm. That article? Tip of the iceberg. The trust trustees are suing for moral turpitude. You'll lose the ranch. The words landed like thunderclaps. Fairgoers murmuring. A kid dropping a basket of beans in shock. Elias's blood roared, stepping forward. Leave. Now. But Lydia leaned in, voice of venomous aside. He's using you, farm boy, to feel alive before he folds. She swept away, but the damage rooted deep. Harlan retreated that night, burger ash on his shirt, face ashen as they drove home in silence. In the kitchen, he shattered, a bottle hurled against tile, shards glittering like accusations. She's right, he choked, sliding to the floor, head and hands. I'll drag us under. So now, Elias, before it consumes you too. Elias knelt, gathering fragments, heart fracturing with each piece. No. We fight. Together. The war waged in boardrooms and backrooms. Lawyers retained. PR spins crafted. The co-op kids rallied for a counter-campaign. Posters of their harvests. Testimonials scrawled in crayon. Mr. Harlan and Eli taught me family ain't blood. Harlan found steel in their eyes. Elias's hand in his during depositions. The ranch's resilience a bulwark. But the betrayal cut deepest from within. Harlan's late-night doubts. Whispered in bed. What if I can't protect you? Elias held him through it. Body's an anchor, but the strain etched lines. Love tested in the forge of scrutiny. Healing began small, a viral video from Riley. Her defiant speech at the fair. Love's what grows us, not what breaks, shared by influencers. Turning tide. Donors trickled back. The lawsuit crumbled under evidence of Lydia's fabrications. By Fall's amber hush. The hollow stood unbowed. Headlines shifting to ranch romance. How love saved a legacy. Elias and Harlan emerged scarred but fused. Their bond tempered. One equinox evening, under a harvest moon, Harlan led Elias to the overlook where they'd first confessed. A blanket spread. Wine poured. He dropped to one knee, not with rings, but soil vials from every field. Marry me, he said, voice steady as bedrock. Not in papers or parades, but here, in the dirt that holds us. Elias pulled him up, kissing him breathless. Yes. To all of it. The wedding was theirs, co-op kids as witnesses. Jasper officiating with vows cribbed from John Muir. Vows exchanged amid sunflowers. Petals confetti in the breeze. Fall's palette painted the hollow in fire, aspens ablaze. Pumpkins swelling in the co-op patch like orange lanterns against encroaching frost. The wedding's echo lingered in every corner. A hand-carved sign at the gate. Kane Whitaker Hollow, hammered by Harlan's unsteady hands. Kids' laughter as they strung fairy lights for the harvest dance. Elias woke to it all. Harlan's arm heavy across his waist. The big house no longer a monolith, but home. Its rooms filled with their rhythms, boots by the door. Sketchpads of co-op expansions on the nightstand. Expansion was the word. Indeed. The co-op burgeoned. Grants flowing from urban philanthropists charmed by Riley's TEDx talk. Now a sophomore mentoring newcomers. Elias helmed to full-time. Harlan divesting final stocks to fund scholarships. His days split between board calls, now advisory, benevolent, and barn-raising with the crew. Their love, once a secret flame, burned open now, fair kisses drawing whistles. Townies nodding approval at the feed store. Yet normalcy carried its own weight. Anniversaries marked not with fanfare, but quiet hikes. Where Harlan's I love you landed heavier each year, laced with the gravity of survival. Winter whispered warnings that year. Not in blizzards, but betrayals subtler. A letter from Harlan's estranged sister. Vivian, in Austin, scented with Chanel and contempt. Daddy would roll in his grave, it read. Enclosing a check for Harlan to buy discretion and dissolve the embarrassment. Harlan burned it in the fireplace. Ashes swirling like vengeful spirits. But Elias saw the flinch, the old wound of family rejection. Oil money's cold calculus. She's wrong, Elias murmured, drawing him close. But Harlan's silence stretched. Nights spent staring at ceiling beams. Ghosts congregating. The crisis crested unexpectedly, in the form of opportunity laced with poison. A developer from Denver, slick as patent leather. Name tag reading Brock Harlan, waltzed in with blueprints for a luxury eco-resort, eyeing the hollow's South Meadows. Partner with us. He pitched over lunch in the bunkhouse. Maps unrolled like seduction. Your co-op preserved. Harlan's legacy amplified. Golf courses. Spas. Drawing the right crowd. Harlan's eyes lit. The tycoon resurfacing. Visions of endowments. The ranch immortalized in marble lobbies. Elias watched. Unease churning. Brock's gaze lingering too long on him. A smirk hinting at leverage. Doubt festered as negotiations dragged into spring. Harlan poring over contracts by lamplight. Elias weeding Rose with increasing fury. It's selling our soul, he argued one thawing evening, mud caking their boots on the porch. Harlan rubbed his temples. Weary. It's security. Elias. For the kids. The future. What if the market tanks? We can't gamble on grants. The words echoed Lydia's. Marcus's practicality's blade, and Elias recoiled. Or what if it's fear? Trading wild for walled gardens. The rift widened. Harlan accepting Brock's invite to Denver for final talks, leaving Elias to oversee a co-op field trip to Glacier. The park's majesty, turquoise lakes cradled in granite. Glaciers calving like ancient sighs, should have soothed, but absence amplified ache. Riley sensed it, linking arms on a trail. Mister. Eli, you look like a storm cloud. Boss man'll come around. He always does for you. Elias forced a smile. But nights in the lodge. Phone silent. He traced Harlan's texts. Miss you. Thinking legacy. Betrayal struck on return. A news alert pinging Elias's phone as he unloaded kids' packs. Whitaker Ranch sells partial stake to eco-dev giant. Heart plummeting. He raced home. The big house dark save study light. Harlan looked up from papers, face crumpling at Elias's expression. It's not what, but Elias cut him. Voice shattering. Partial? You signed without me. Harlan stood. Hands out. It secures us. Brock promised co-op priority. Your garden's untouched. Us Elias spat. The word venom now. We're your empire's ghost. I thought we buried that. Harlan's confession spilled then. Vivian's check cashed in desperation after a market dip. Brock's whispers of protecting your unconventional life from family suits. I did it for you, he pleaded. But Elias saw the lie. Fear. Not love. Driving the pen. You did it for control, he whispered, grabbing his keys. I can't breathe in your what-ifs. He fled to the stables, saddling Dante in moonlight, riding hard into the hills until lungs burned, tears freezing on cheeks. Dawn found him at the overlook, horse grazing, Harlan's truck rumbling up the trail. No words at first, just Harlan's arms wrapping from behind, chin on Elias's shoulder, the valley awakening below. I tore it up, Harlan murmured, papers fluttering from his pocket like surrendered flags. Called Brock at 3 a.m. Told him to shove it. You're right, legacy's not land. It's this. His hand covered Elias's heart. Steady. Forgiveness came slow. A thaw, weeks of raw talks by the fire. Harlan dismantling the study shrine to his past. Framed deals. Oil baron photos consigned to attic dust. Elias led co-op expansions unhindered. New greenhouses rising like phoenixes. Kids naming plots after lost kin. Their love rekindled in the rebuilding. Nights of unhurried exploration. Harlan's vulnerability a new aphrodisiac. Elias's trust a gift renewed. By summer, the Hollow thrived anew, a music festival fundraiser drawing crowd from Seattle. Fiddles wailing under string lights. Harlan and Elias slow dancing in the crush. unashamed. Vivian's next letter arrived, an apology. Tentative. Enclosing seeds from the panhandle. Plant them. See if they take. Harlan did, with Elias's hand in his. The sprout's a symbol of mending bloodlines. The true healing crystallized in Crisis's wake, a boy's arrival at the co-op. Jamie, 14, run from a Dallas conversion camp. Eyes haunted as winter woods. Elias saw his younger self in Jamie's flinch. Harlan his own buried youth. They mentored him together, Harlan teaching coding for crop apps. Elias soils patience, and when Jamie bloomed, hugging them fierce at harvest. Whispering, "Thanks for being real," the circle closed. Love wasn't absence of storm, but standing in it, roots entwined. One starlit August night, post-festival cleanup, Harlan pulled Elias to the east field. Now a sea of sunflowers nodding approval. "We're unbreakable now," he said, kissing him deep, the world fading to petals and pulse. Elias smiled against his lips, heart full. "We always were." Autumn wove its golden spell over the hollow, leaves carpeting paths like nature's confetti. The co-op's second year cresting with abundance, crates of apples fermenting into cider. Kids' murals adorning the new education barn in vibrant defiance. Elias and Harlan moved through it seamless. Their partnership a quiet legend, hands clasped over planning meetings. Shared glances across crowded potlucks that spoke volumes. The ranch had become a beacon. Inquiries flooding from youth programs nationwide. Vivian even visiting once. Awkward barbecue hugs evolving to tentative trail rides. Her check returned with a note. "Our legacies better green. Yet depth demands descent." And winter's approach carried an undercurrent of fragility. Harlan's health faltered first, a persistent cough dismissed as allergies, until Theo insisted on Missoula General. The diagnosis landed like a felled oak, early-stage lung cancer, aggressive from years of boardroom stress smokes. The city's toxic legacy Harlan had fled too late. Treatable, the oncologist assured. Chemo schedules mapped. But Elias heard the unspoken, battles won, but scars eternal. Harlan broke the news by the hearth, fire crackling mockery, his hand steady in Elias's despite the tremor in his voice. "It's a fight, not the end," Elias nodded, throat of ice, pulling him close, the man who had upended his world, now fragile in flannel, bones pressing too sharp. "We fight together," Elias whispered, the vow iron. But inside, terror gnawed, visions of empty porches, co-op kids asking, "Where's Mister?" Harlan, the hollow echoing without his rumble. The crisis unfolded in measured chaos, chemo days blurring to nausea and needles. Harlan's frame shrinking as appetite waned. Yet his spirit unbowed, joking with Jasper over Jell-O, coding lesson plans from his sickbed. Elias anchored it all, juggling co-op reins with bedside vigils. Hands chapped from washing linens. Heart raw from Harlan's midnight confessions. "Don't let me fade into pity." Elias. Remember the overlook. The rain. Love became care's crucible. Baths drawn with lavender from the garden. Stories read from mirror to drown out monitors' beeps. Their intimacy shifting to tender, fingers laced during infusions. Kisses on fevered brows. Betrayal reared not from malice, but mortality's indifference. A donor pulling funding mid-treatment. Citing instability in the personal drama, echoes of Lydia's smears. The co-op teetered. Kids' faces falling at canceled workshops. Riley's fists clenched. "We need him," Eli. Elias raged silently, scraping savings, rallying hands for work bees. But exhaustion hollowed him, sleepless nights staring at Harlan's labored breaths, questioning if he'd signed up for this endgame. The breaking came in March, snow melting to mud, Harlan's fever spiking post-round 3. Delirium gripped him, ramblings of Austin oil fields. Lydia's laugh. Please to not leave me in the dark. Elias held vigil. Theo's morphine drip of mercy. Whispering anchors. I'm here. The sunflowers wait. As dawn crept, Harlan surfaced, eyes clearing, gripping Elias's hand like lifeline. I saw it, he rasped, voice threadbare. The other side, empty, without you. Don't let go. Tears carved paths down Elias's face. The room shrinking to heartbeat sync. Never. Remission flickered by spring's thaw. Scans showing shrinkage. But the scare reshaped them. Harlan quitting the last cigarette ghost. Trading scotch for herbal teas. The co-op rebranded Resilience Roots. Funding surging from Jamie's viral blog, My Hero's Harvest. Healing wove through vulnerability. Support groups in Kalispell, where Harlan shared the ranch hand who farmed my heart. Elias admitting fears of widowhood. Their love deepened. Physicality reborn in gentleness, slow dances in the kitchen. Harlan's renewed strength lifting Elias against counters. Gasps mingling with gratitude. Summer brought triumph. The co-op's first national award. A ceremony in Bozeman where Harlan, gaunt but grinning in a borrowed suit, accepted with Elias at his side. Speech weaving their story. Love isn't plotless land. It's the hands that till it. Cheers thundered. Vivian in the audience wiping tears. The kids whooping from folding chairs. Back home, under Firefly's ballet, Harlan proposed permanence anew, not vows, but wills drawn. The ranch deeded joint, a living trust for the co-op's perpetuity. The true crisis's gift was clarity, mortality's shadow illuminating light. Harlan mentored a teen coding club, his hacks optimizing irrigation drones. Elias expanded therapy gardens, planting for grief, rows of lavender for loss, marigolds for memory. Jamie, now 18, stayed on as apprentice. His I love yous to both men a bridge across generations. One harvest eve, sun dipping gold, Harlan led Elias to the sunflowers, taller now, heads heavy with seed. We made it, he said, pulling a chain from his pocket, 2 pendants. Soil vials miniaturized, engraved roots entwined. Elias fastened it around Harlan's neck, their own linking like vows. And we'll keep making, he replied, kissing him as petals rained soft. Winter returned kinder. Chemo a memory, Harlan's cough a faint echo. They faced it arm in arm, the hollow a testament. Love's not immunity from storm, but the will to weather it. Emerging verdant. Years folded into the hollow's timeless weave. Seasons cycling like breaths. Winters of hearthglow vigils yielding to summers of co-op clamor. The ranch a living archive of their odyssey. Harlan's remission held, a defiant green shoot against odds. His frame filling out with trail miles and Theo's ribbing prescriptions. More ride-in, less worrying. Elias, silver threading his temples now, helmed the co-op's national model. Chapters sprouting in Oregon hollows and Vermont valleys. Kids like Jamie, now a grad student, returning summers with city polish and country heart, carrying the torch. Their love matured into legend's quiet core, anniversaries marked with overlooked picnics, wine from vines they'd planted, Harlan's toasts evolving. To the farmer who tilled my fallow heart. Intimacies softened to poetry. Dawn fingers tracing sleep-flushed skin. Midnight whispers trading dreams of grandkids. Not blood but chosen. Co-op alumni circling back with tots in tow. Yet age's subtle siege crept. Harlan's knee buckling on icy paths. Elias's back protesting hay tosses. Reminders that time tilled all fields. The final crisis brewed slow. A Montana autumn of amber haze. When Vivian's call shattered a harvest brunch. "It's the cancer," she said, voice cracking over static. Recurrent. Docs give months. Harlan hung up, face ashen as stripped timber. Elias's hand in is the only anchor. No rage this time, just acceptance's ache. A shared gaze across the table holding volumes. The ad, the kiss, the storms weathered. They chose the hollow for the endgame. No sterile suites. Theo coordinating hospice in the big house. Kids rotating vigils with pies and playlists. Harlan fought with wry grace. Experimental trials in Missoula. Coding legacy apps from his bed. Dictating co-op expansions to Elias's steady pen. "Don't mourn yet," he'd quip. Morphine soft. Pulling Elias down for kisses that tasted of forever. Betrayal's ghosts surfaced in doubts. Harlan's midnight fears. "What if I leave you broken?" Elias silenced them with truths. "You mended me." That's the gift. Healing inverted now. Elias the vessel. Gardens expanded with Harlan's Haven plots. Memorial benches carved by Jasper's grandkids. The community a chorus sustaining them. Vivian relocated. Bunkhouse or base. Thawing fully, stories of Texas boyhoods. Apologies blooming late but lush. Riley, a counselor now, led grief circles for the crew. Her we grow through the mantra. Winter gripped gentle. Snow muffling the world as Harlan weakened. Days a blur of hand-holding and handle on the stereo. One eve, fire low. He gathered them, Elias. Vivian, core hands. Video-linked kids. My plot was plotless till Elias, he rasped. Eyes fierce. Love him fierce. The land too. Laughter rippled. Tears trailing. A tapestry complete. The end came dawn-lit. February's hush. Harlan slipping quiet in sleep. Elias's head on his chest. Heartbeat fading to echo. Grief crashed then. An avalanche burying Elias for weeks. Meals untouched. Fields untended. The hollow holding breath. But roots endure. Co-op kids planting a sunflower labyrinth in Harlan's name. Vivian's arm around Elias at the burial. Simple plot under the overlook. Vile necklace buried with him. Spring's resurrection pulled Elias through. Green shoots piercing snow. Jamie's hand in his at the memorial service. Speeches weaving Harlan's light. Healing was communal now. Nights with Rory visiting. Finn's letters from afar. The ranch's rhythm, a heartbeat persisting. Elias found purpose in legacy. Co-op scholarships in Harlan's name. Trails named for their rides. A novel penned in stolen hours. Fallow Hearts, published to quiet acclaim. Years later, gray-haired on the porch swing, Elias watched grandnieces chase fireflies. Vivian's stories bridging generations. The hollow thrived. A testament, love's not undying bloom, but enduring seed sown in soil, harvested in souls, whispering eternity in every petal. In the quiet, Elias touched the pendant. Harlan's voice a wind-warm echo. We made it. And in the sunflower's nod, he replied, always.